Two young women completely vanish while hiking a popular trail in Panama. Months later, the jungle yields only a few scattered fragments of their bones, along with a digital camera containing 90 terrifying photos taken in the dead of night. From manipulated digital footprints to skeletal remains that pathologists struggle to explain, there are so many strange things about this case that just do not add up. What really happened to Lisanne Froon and Kris Kremers? Welcome to The Coven. I'm Samantha, the Crime Witch. This is where we will dive deep into true crime cases, examine unexplained mysteries, and shed light on some of the world's darkest stories. For our very first episode, we are examining a case that has completely haunted me for years. It is a story that has been officially hand-waved away by authorities as a simple hiking accident. But when you look at the raw forensic data, the timeline, and the geography of the trail, it becomes clear that something absolutely tragic happened to these girls. Before we crawl into the nightmare that began on April 1st, 2014, we need to know exactly who Kris and Lisanne were. They weren't reckless tourists. They were smart, responsible, and incredibly vibrant young women from the Netherlands. Lisanne Froon was 22 years old. She was an aspiring photographer, standing over 6 feet tall, highly organized, and graduated with a degree in applied sciences. Her friend Kris Kremers was 21. Kris was a passionate social worker, deeply empathetic, with a love for culture, art, and acting. They actually worked together at a cafe back home and had spent 6 months saving up every extra penny for this dream trip to Panama. And this wasn't just a vacation. It was supposed to be a meaningful transition into adulthood. They arrived in Panama on March 15, 2014 for a 6-week trip. They spent the first 2 weeks traveling around, visiting beaches, and getting adjusted. Then, on March 29th, they arrived in the small mountainous tourist town of Boquete. They were staying with a local host family, and they were scheduled to spend the next month volunteering with local children and improving their Spanish. When they showed up to start their volunteer work on Monday, March 31st, there was a major administrative mix-up. The program simply wasn't ready for them yet. Suddenly, these two highly organized girls found themselves with a completely open week. On the morning of Tuesday, April 1st, the weather in Boquete was absolutely flawless. Sunny, warm, not a cloud in the sky. They decided to make the most of their free time by hiking the famous Pianista Trail. They packed light because by all accounts, this was supposed to be a quick afternoon stroll. They shared a single backpack. Inside, they put Lisanne's Canon digital camera, both of their cell phones, Kris's iPhone 4, and Lisanne's Samsung Galaxy, some cash, a bottle of water, a pair of sunglasses, and a passport. They left the host house around 11 a.m., took a taxi to the trailhead, and stepped onto the path. Now, let's talk about El Pianista. If you look it up, it's marketed as a relatively straightforward hike. It ascends through lush green hills up to a beautiful continental divide called the Mirador Summit. From the town side, it takes about 2 hours to reach the top. If you stand at the summit, you get a breathtaking view of the valley below. And this is where we have concrete proof of their timeline. We have the photos from Lisanne's Canon camera. Between 1 p.m. and 1:40 p.m., they are at the summit. The photos show them smiling, the sun shining directly on them. Kris's vibrant red hair is glowing against the green backdrop. They look completely happy, totally at ease. But here is where the story fractures. If you are a tourist, when you reach that summit, you turn around and walk back down the way you came, heading straight back to the safety of Boquete. But Kris and Lisanne didn't do that. They kept walking past the summit, crossing the Continental Divide, and descending down the other side into the official border of the Baru Volcano National Park, which is a deep, roadless jungle. So why did they keep going? The most logical guess is that they didn't realize that they had crossed a dangerous ecological threshold. The path continues naturally, and they likely thought it was just a loop or a short extension of the scenic trail. The last normal photos on the camera were taken around 1:40 p.m. One photo shows Kris crossing a small muddy stream. The terrain is visibly changing here. It's narrower, steeper, and surrounded by dense rainforest. The sun is still out, but the shadows are lengthening. Less than 3 hours later, the nightmare officially begins. At 4:39 p.m., just under 3 hours after they were smiling at the summit, the first distress call is made from Kris's iPhone 4 to 112, which is the international emergency number. Just 12 minutes later, at 4:51 p.m., a second call is placed, this time from Lisanne Samsung Galaxy, also to 112. Neither call goes through. There is absolutely no cell service in that deep valley past the summit. Let's think about that moment. It's late afternoon, the jungle canopy blocks out the remaining daylight incredibly fast. They are realizing they are lost, or someone or something has blocked their path. After those 2 failed calls, the phones are turned off for the night, presumably to save battery. Let's look closely at the entire excruciating log over the next few days, because this data tells a story of its own. April 2nd, early in the morning at 6:58 a.m., Kris's iPhone turns on. A call to 112 is made, but no signal. At 8:14 a.m., Lisanne's Samsung turns on. Another failed emergency call is placed. April 3rd, the calls continue. They tried dialing 911, the Panamanian emergency number, alongside 112. Still no signal. But by the afternoon of April 3rd, something changes. Lisanne's Samsung phone is left on for a stretch of several hours, as if desperately searching for a signal, completely draining its battery until it goes permanently dead. April 5th to April 11th, only the iPhone remains. But starting on April 6th, the pattern shifts in a way that makes my skin crawl. Someone turns the iPhone on, but they don't try to call emergency services anymore. From April 7th to April 11th, the iPhone is turned on multiple times, but the correct PIN code is never entered again. It is either turned on to check the home screen for service, or someone who didn't know the code was trying to access the phone. Finally, on April 11th, the phone is turned on at 10:51 a.m. and left on until the battery completely drains at 11:56 a.m. It shuts down permanently. While the girls are missing, an intense search party is launched. Helicopters are flying overhead, local volunteers are scouring the forest, but they find absolutely nothing. No footprints, no torn clothing, not even trash. Until mid-June, a local woman from an indigenous village turns in a clean, intact food backpack that she found on the edge of the river, miles away from where the hike began. Inside that backpack are their clothes neatly folded, their cash, their intact cell phones, and Lisanne's Canon camera. When investigators opened the memory card of that camera, they found something that shocked the entire world. First, there's a missing link. Image number 509 is completely, utterly gone. It was completely wiped from the camera in a way that can only be done using a computer, not just the camera interface. The photos skip directly from number 508, which is the last daytime photo of Kris by the creek, to number 510, which begins the infamous night photos. Why was number 509 deleted? If it was a glitch, why didn't the camera log it? And then we get to the night of April 8th. Between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m. in pitch blackness, 99 photos are taken in rapid succession. Almost all of them are completely dark, but a few show terrifying details. One shows a strange rock formation surrounded by plastic wrappers. Another shows a twig with a red plastic tag tied to it, like a makeshift trail marker. The most haunting photo of all is a close-up of the back of Kris Kremers' head. Her distinct red hair is completely dry and she appears to be lying down. Is she hurt? Is she dead? Or was Lisanne trying to use the camera flash as a makeshift flashlight or signaling device to a search helicopter? This brings us to the core of the mystery. The official conclusion by the Panamanian and Dutch authorities was that this was a tragic accident. They believe the girls got lost, wandered off the trail, and eventually fell off a steep cliff into the river or succumbed to starvation and injury. They point to the fact that later that summer, fragments of their bones, including a pelvis bone belonging to Kris and a foot still inside of a boot belonging to Lisanne, were found scattered along the riverbank. Lisanne's foot showed signs of severe inflammation, leading to the injury theory that she broke her ankle and Kris stayed with her until they both perished. But let's look at the facts. Let's look at what the loss theory completely ignores, and why my gut, and the gut of so many who look into this, tells a completely different story. First, let's talk about the geography. If you keep walking past the Mirador summit on that trail, you aren't in a totally empty, lawless void. Within a few hours of walking, you pass several small, localized indigenous huts and farm structures. If two lost girls were wandering that path for days, they almost certainly would have encountered those structures or the local paths leading to them. They were smart girls. They wouldn't just walk in circles or in a straight line away from safety. Second, the condition of the backpack. It was found miles away, completely clean, dry, and undamaged, with the electronics inside functioning perfectly. If they fell off a cliff into a raging tropical river, how did a canvas backpack survive perfectly intact without being torn to shreds by rocks? Not only that, but how did the backpack even survive that long in the forest without showing signs of wear? And then there's the sinister underbelly of Boquete itself. In the years surrounding 2014, multiple other tourists and locals went missing or were found dead under highly suspicious circumstances in that exact area. There were rumors of a local gang or specific group of men who targeted young female travelers. Did Kris and Lisanne cross paths with someone who meant to harm them? That question lingered for over a decade, until independent digital forensic experts finally got access to the raw phone data in 2025. And what they found blows this entire case wide open, proving that the girls' phones were professionally hacked and manipulated while locked inside an evidence room.
Why would Panamanian officials go to such extreme lengths to manipulate the digital timeline? What were they trying to hide? Is protecting their tourist industry really worth the price of justice for Kris and Lisanne? Next week, we are diving straight into the 3,000 pages of case files and shedding light on all of the evidence that has been left in the dark. We will break down the hacked system logs, the scrubbed surveillance footage, the buried witness statements, and the terrifying neglect and blatant attempt at a cover-up by Panamanian authorities. Hit the subscribe button on YouTube, follow the podcast on Spotify, and don't miss a single deep dive, dropping every Sunday.
Stay safe out there, watch the shadows, and I'll see you next week.